1,200 Films podcast. Chuck Loaf here, all horror all the time. On the show, as I usually do, I cover 8 horror films, usually randomly, just whatever I can find. And I cover them in quick succession, because I don't have the stamina to do an hour show. So, we kind of have to go quick. Of course, the rating scale. On the bottom, dumpster, fire, garbage. Can't quite recommend. Okay if desperate. Put it on the watch list. Put it on top of the watch list. This is the last batch of movies I watched during COVID. My little COVID vacation I had recently. Then we can start back on normal programming. Let's get going. All films are from 2021. Speaking of which, I just watched that Don't Look Up movie. Not a horror film, but nice. Anyway, back to the horror films. A classic horror story, critic rating 50%, according to Rotten Tomatoes, and an audience score of 33. This is an Italian movie. It is dubbed voices. It's on Netflix. Netflix has a lot of these dubbed voices movies. They take a lot of these horror films from wherever. This film, I think, tried to be another Midsommar, but it's not quite. So this group are taking a trip to wherever, and their little camper breaks down, and then suddenly they're in the middle of a field. They have a little crash with a tree, and all of a sudden they're unconscious, and they're in the middle of a field and can't find their way out of the forest. And there's this little creepy little cabin, and things happen in the cabin. And there's this cult, and whenever there's creepy cabins and cults in middle of the forest, it's usually not a very good outcome. First half of this movie was great. Then the twists and turns started to happen, and it kind of hurt it a little bit. Still, I thought, nice film. Put it on the watch list. A classic horror story. Who thought of that title? I don't know, but isn't. Next one. Blood Red Sky. Critic rating 80%, audience score 57. This is a German film, also found on Netflix. It is mostly in English. Mostly. So this woman and her little son are taking a plane ride, and it's taken over by terrorists. And this woman is taking these oddball pills to stop her transitioning to something else. Well, since it's being taken over by terrorists, she has to transition into her alternate being, and that makes for an interesting scenario. Co-star Dominic Purcell from Prison Break. I guess he's still working. That's nice to see. This was it was fine. Good time killer. Okay if desperate. Next. Godzilla vs. Kong. Critic rating 75%. Audience score 91. Why? First half hour I thought was fine. I thought it was Godzilla attacking Kong when Kong is drugged and tied down to a carrier in the ocean. That was a little sneaky. But then this film got weird. They're like jumping between worlds, and then Kong finds this big axe, and he's blocking Godzilla's fire with his axe. And what? The good part of these Godzilla films is they were kind of believable. It's like, what if this big giant monster? Then all this world jumping stuff happened. And it was like, oh, you lost me. Can't quite recommend. Not for me. Another one not for me is The Guilty. Critic rating 74, audience score 47. Jake Gyllenhaal basically staring into a camera for an hour and a half, sweating and yelling and crying, and he's a 911 operator with a checkered past. And he gets calls, and throughout the show, you learn more about him, and yada yada. Kind of reminded me of that Tom Hardy movie, where he's driving around for an hour and a half, and it's just him talking on his cell phone. And throughout the movie, his whole life kind of falls apart just by the conversation he has during that one little car ride. But that movie was a lot better than The Guilty. Usually I enjoy Jake Gyllenhaal. This is not Nightcrawler. This is not even close. So, again, can't quite recommend. Next, time for a Mountain Dew break. Voices get dry. All right, these Fear Street movies. Netflix released 3 of these all last year. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. And I watched all of them all right in a row. So let's go. Fear Street Part 1, 1994. Critic rating 83%. Audience score is 62. I thought this is like teenage horror, like a Scream movie, but it's about as well made as you're gonna get. And I thought it was enjoyable, and I got through it no problem. What the plot was is slipping my mind. And there's this witch they find, and the witch makes dead people come after them, and yep. So they got to stop the witch, I guess. They disturbed her grave. The characters made it good. I'd say put it on the watch list. The rest aren't so wonderful, but well, let's get to it. Fear Street Part 2, 1978. This film jumps around in time, as you can see. Critic rating 88%, audience score of 80. We go back to summer camp in 1978, and this film explains more what happened in 1994 in the first one by jumping back. Watchable, enjoyable, but not great. Okay if desperate. It's more teen horror. I think it's trying to be an American Horror Story. That's the vibe I got, and it didn't quite pull it off. So yeah, okay if desperate. Next one, Fear Street Part 3, 1666. Critic rating 90%, audience score 76. This was the weakest of the 3. For the first half, I guess, they were in 1666, the kids from the first one. I guess not them, but they're the people that played them. You'd have to watch to understand. But the part that occurs in 1666 is pretty tough to get through. I had the finger on the button to stop it because I just about had enough. But then the last half hour or so, it picked up. It ended pretty well. A lot of people not happy with the ending. I understand. When you got supernatural and witches and time jumping, it's going to be hard to please everybody, but it is what it is, as they say. And it was fine. Okay if desperate. The low end of okay if desperate. But if you really did love the first one, then you could probably get through the rest of them. Just don't expect great things. Okay, are we done? Yes. Okay, time for the main event. Shadow in the Cloud.
What's your name, honey?
Flight Officer Garrett.
Ain't no women in the Air Corps.
I'm a flight mechanic and a pilot.
You're not a pilot. You're a delivery girl.
Sir, requesting requesting permission to fire on an enemy attacker.
You wouldn't even know how to fire a gun.
I was being polite.
She hit it! She was right! Who the hell are you, Miss Garrett?
What is she here for?
Did you hear that?
What the hell is that racket?
There's something on top of the plane.
Something on the goddamn tires.
Covered this briefly, Shadow in the Cloud, on my best and worst of 2021, but this is my chance to give it a full review. It has a critic rating of 78% and an audience score of 32. That's baloney. I think it's time I left a review to make it up to 33. But we'll see. So this woman, this is during World War II-ish, I guess. I don't know my history all that well. But this woman gets on this fighter plane with this package. And she's like, you got to keep me safe. I have this note from whoever, and you got to give me passage to go from here to there. And I go, okay, whatever, lady. And the sexual harassment she puts up with, it's ridiculous. First of all, they sit her underneath the little plane in the little tiny little bubble area where the gunner sits and shoots all the enemies. It's just barely big enough for a person to sit in. So, and this is the first half of the movie. This is pure claustrophobia. Then she gets stuck in there, and it just gets worse and worse. And then she has this creature crawling around the plane, like chewing up wires and stuff. Oh, on top of all the enemy planes trying to shoot them down. So there's a lot going on. Sexual harassment, monsters on the wing, and then enemy fighter jets. So there's yeah, a lot to swallow on this movie. But well made. Flowed greatly. And the ending was adequate. So, put that top of the watch list. I believe this made my top 5 of the year. I don't remember, but I'm sure it did. So on the next one, gotta turn the page to find them. All right, we got Come True, Censor, The Vice Guide to Bigfoot. It's a horror comedy about Bigfoot. The Arbors, Horror in the High Desert, The Toll, The Medium, and I finally watched Antlers. Years of build-up, looking forward to this movie, and I finally found it for less than an arm and a leg, and I watched it. So we'll cover that next time. Most of those films I just mentioned were on BloodyDisgusting.com's list. They had 2 lists. One was the best of the year, and then another list was of best horror films you may have missed. So we're gonna tackle those and see if that list is worth a damn. So until next time,